Hey, want to hear a story? We are diving back into the world of fandom, which went so well the last few times. But this time, we're delving into fandom years past, all right? This drama happened in 2002. Yeah, it's older than I am. Think on that for a second. You feel old yet? Because you should. Anyway, the point is that yes, it started in 2002, but it has gone on for years upon years. This is a person who has caused drama in every single fandom he has ever been a part of. From Lord of the Rings to Harry Potter to Supernatural, he has become an infamous figure. A man who claimed he could channel the spirits of his characters. A man who claimed to be a spiritual master himself, doing the bidding of higher powers above mortal conception. He is a man who has gathered a following of his own, and he sounds a lot like a cult leader. Sounds like a cult leader, doesn't he? And yeah, he actually has been a cult leader, apparently, a few times in a few different fandoms, which, yeah, that sentence is disturbing enough on its own. If you're familiar with this person, you no doubt already know who I'm talking about. This person is Andy Blake. He's gone through a few name changes over the years, but that is going to be the one that I use for him today. Like I said, he's bounced through many a fandom, but I mean, you're probably thinking, this isn't side quest, this is your mainline critical failure series. Don't you normally talk about TTRPG stuff? Well, my friends, there was a fandom craze that swept nerd culture in the mid to late 2010s that Andy Blake wanted to be a part of. Yeah, that's right. Andy Blake, famed alleged cult leader, found Critical Role. He wanted to be a part of the Critical Role fandom. He wanted to be a part of the Critical Role universe. He wanted to actually meet the Critical Role cast and went all the way to LA in an effort to do so, at least according to the people he was staying with. This story is wild. It's long, and I'm going to skip over a lot of the pre-Critical Role stuff because there's a ton of it. I'll link some videos in the description if you want the full story, but I'll do my best to give you the cliff notes and tell you how this cult leader wanted to get an elaborate gourmet dinner with the Critical Role cast. Without further ado, y'all, what the hell happened? Before we get started, I do want to clarify that Andy Blake is a trans man. Obviously, that resulted in him changing his name. But beyond that, Andy Blake also used many different pseudonyms throughout the story. For the sake of not burning your brain down to mush, I'm going to refer to him by his chosen identity, Andy Blake, throughout the entire video, just so that we can keep the story consistent. If I refer to this guy by every single pseudonym he uses, you will be confused. I know I sure as hell was. If it's relevant, I might bring it up, but for the purposes of this video, this dude is Andy. Okay, so rewind all the way back to 2002. I haven't been born yet, but you know what has been born? The Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. The epic franchise that would influence fantasy for years to come has just started, and fandom has gotten its claws into this brand new movie. The nascent internet is being used to host some of the first fandom websites, including Bit of Earth. Yeah, this was back when fandoms actually had their own websites instead of just using someone else's website and hosting their own pages on it. A good time. But Bit of Earth probably is not the best example of why this was a good thing. Bit of Earth was a fandom website dedicated to Samwise Gamgee and the actor Sean Astin. They really love Sam. I mean, who wouldn't love Sam? They love Sam for his compassion, his bravery, his devotion, and his ability to have erotic gay sex with Frodo Baggins. Yes, A Bit of Earth was a lot of things, and one of those things was a fandom who really likes Slash, which essentially means like NSFW, very NSFW fan fiction. And let me make this clear. There's nothing wrong with that, all right? I personally do not get the appeal, but I'm not everybody, and I'm glad these people have something that they can hook onto and that they can love. But I did say that this was an example of the bad parts of early internet, and that is because of the top dog at Bit of Earth, Andy Blake. This community was not small. They were big enough that Sean Astin himself actually did a collab with them on a charity project. We'll get to that later. But the point is, it was a big community. Andy had access to a lot of people, and he started to try and use this community to build his own cult based around the mythos of Lord of the Rings. My master says that some of the creatures of Middle-earth, elves, dragons, dwarves, existed much as described, as beings other than man, long ago, because there are artifacts found beyond the capabilities of the cultures they were found in, and there are just too damn many myths from tribes that never knew each other, countries that never collided, and they are all the same. My master says that the surge of interest in Tolkien's Middle-earth has created a huge explosion of creational energy, not only through the fans, but through the thousands of deeply devoted people in the production itself. The real star spirits and tree spirits are reacting to it, reaching out in return. In our case, they reach out to us through the most closely identified aspect: hobbits. Why the most closely identified aspect wouldn't be like the actual humans in Lord of the Rings? That is beyond me, but we're going to move on. Look, the point is, this guy believed, apparently, that the Lord of the Rings characters were real, that Tolkien was not someone writing a fiction, he was a divine messenger given this knowledge and then wrote it into a book. It's actually very similar to the beliefs of Snape wives who fell in love with Severus Snape. That's a whole other different thing. We could do a side quest about that. But look, Andy also believed he could embody these characters, manifest them. He believed they could go into him and that they would talk through his own form. At first, he manifested mostly just the cast of Lord of the Rings, not like the characters in Lord of the Rings. I mean like the actors who played the characters in Lord of the Rings. In fact, many of his name changes throughout the timeline, they are actually due to various cast members apparently coming into his body and changing who he is. Andy Blake actually comes from him being inhabited by Orlando Bloom. Alright, cool. A lot of people believed in Bit of Earth that this was just like role-playing, but obviously Andy was taking it a lot more serious than that. He was building out his own dang religion, and that did cause some people to bounce off. But as with every sunk cost, there are many people who did drink the Kool-Aid and join alongside Andy's religion, including his own girlfriend named Abby. Abby's going to be our central point of view throughout this first part of the story, as it's her testimony that carries us through it. Now, Bit of Earth, they had their eccentricities, but they didn't do nothing. They actually had their own major events. Like I said earlier, they actually collab with Sean Astin, the man who plays Samwise Gamgee, on a charity project, specifically a community garden for a charity that Sean Astin himself is very, very passionate about. This is a very honorable, noble endeavor, but it was a mess behind the scenes. Organizing anything, including charity projects, is very difficult, and Andy and his underlings were not exactly prepared for it. A lot of behind the scenes kerfuffling. I'm gonna skip over most of it and just get to the funniest part, in my opinion. When it actually came time to work on the garden and people were out there working hard, rolling up their sleeves, Andy Blake showed up in a cast. Oh no, guess while everyone else is slaving away, Andy Blake can't do anything himself. What a pity. Yeah. Now, this is not the most famous example of Bit of Earth's nonsense. This was just the example with Sean Astin in it. The next example was an entire convention. Yes, a Lord of the Rings fan convention created by Bit of Earth. This guy couldn't do a charity community garden correctly. I don't know how he thought he could manage an entire convention. And if you're wondering how he tried with lies. He just did it with a lot of lies. Essentially, when people started asking like, hey, do you have celebrity guests? Do you have proper funding? Do you have a location? Are there ticket sales? Are there proper events? He would just lie. He'd just lie and say it's all taken care of, when in fact, it wasn't. It wasn't taken care of at all. I don't really know what the end game was here other than a failure, but clearly Andy wasn't really thinking it through. He had a really bad habit of thinking that Lord of the Rings cast members saying, maybe maybe I'll do this means that they're definitely going to do it. So then Andy would go and announce that so-and-so cast member will be at this convention. And obviously that would really tick off so-and-so cast member's agent. And so-and-so cast member would definitely not be showing up to this convention.
But his webmaster and 2 agents were appalled by the disorganization, the misinformation, false advertising, the public crowdfunding for his airfare, and due to this debacle, Billy Boyd had to back out of the event.
Instead, Andy did get some minor side characters with small speaking roles or background folks from the Lord of the Rings movies to appear at the convention. These were people who were flying a very far distance to be here, and Andy allegedly thought that if he claimed his organization was a non-profit, then that means that they would get free airfare. As somebody who has worked for non-profits overseas and had to fly overseas to do that work, let me tell you, it's not free airfare. Worth every penny, and I recommend people do it. Gives you some perspective on things, but at the same time, it is definitely not free, and Andy found that out the hard way. Also, in case it wasn't already implied, Andy is not a nonprofit organization, so even if this were the case, then he could get free airfare, he wouldn't. Now, he still needs to get these cast members, these guests, to the convention, so he actually suckered a friend out of $15,000 in order to do it. She had taken pity on him, I suppose, and paid for it, though when she started asking questions and realizing how much of a disaster this entire project is, she quickly blew up. Also, Janine, the woman in the story who is now out a lot of money, she would have a crash out and write an entire book about the situation, which acted as the source for a lot of this info. Unfortunately, the source is also transphobic. We'll get to it, don't worry. There was a bunch of nonsense I'm skipping over, but the point is that at the end of all this nonsense, the tickets were canceled. And the Lord of the Rings cast members that did come, the 3 of them that arrived in the States from overseas for this convention, they were stuck. There's also no hotel room for them. So, guess what? They got to sleep in the bit of earth apartment that Andy and all his underlings were at. Yay to them! Andy had a whole episode when the House of Cards fell apart. His convention was obviously a disaster. The lies would not continue, and people were quite annoyed with him. He dealt with this by deep-throating a bunch of pills and needing to be taken to the hospital. Now, according to the medical professionals after this, Andy did not do anything that would be anywhere close to a fatal dosage. It just made him a little bit sick and made him throw up. But that means throughout this entire process, through all the crap, Andy is in a hospital bed while the rest of his friends, his cult members, and his girlfriend were handling the fallout of all of his lying. Absolutely unbelievable. Obviously, in the aftermath of all this, and by the way, I am skipping over a ton of other crap that happened. I mean, seriously, this was a whole story. But in the aftermath of the convention falling apart, Andy's cult also fell apart. I mean, the people who have been loyal to him, they got seriously screwed over by this guy. And it's no surprise that they decided to move away from him, and get him the hell out of their lives. But his girlfriend, Abby, she decided to stay. That's Kool-Aid, it's a serious thing. I mean, I don't want to joke about this. Andy may not have been Scientology. He wasn't brainwashing thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, but he was still engaging in a form of brainwashing, according to Abby. He was doing something to her that was absolutely awful. According to Abby's testimony, Andy is fitting a lot of the definitions for an abusive figure in her life. She was alone and isolated and only had him. In return for her loyalty, he would gift her with an expanded version of his religion. Now, it contained characters from beyond Lord of the Rings universe. It even contained some of his own OCs. Oh joy, oh golly. It contained child soldiers fighting a mystical war. It contained characters from the Narnia universe. It contained a main character role for both Abby and for Andy Blake. They were both central people in a mystical conflict. And also, apparently, Abby was, according to him, the reincarnation of Tolkien. That's not relevant to anything. But he said that, and I needed to point it out. Anyway, he also claimed that they were supposed to be on the run from the government. No, seriously. He claimed that the government were after him for all of this science fiction, fantasy, mysticism stuff, and they needed to run away to Canada. Andy decided to commit the civil violation, not criminal violation, of crossing the border without papers. At least it's a topical story. The Canadian border guard decided to properly do their job and just turn him around, but, well, he reacted very badly to this. Before I could even process, Jordan, Andy's name at the time, completely loses his shit. He started screaming and tearing at his hair, shrieking like the crazed person he really is. He wailed and cried and howled like a spoiled child, and I was left to be the only adult handling the situation. And I couldn't. When I was interviewed by the surprisingly sympathetic immigration agent, I couldn't even explain why we were there. I had no answers. Look, it's all falling apart now, isn't it? But luckily, Abby had a guardian angel. Her mom. Yeah, when you got nothing, you got your family. And Abby's mom was there to help her. She had been keeping tabs on Abby this whole time, despite the fact that her daughter had cut her out of her life. Abby's mom was making sure that she was okay, saving up money. And Abby's mom wanted to make sure that she had an opportunity to rebuild her life. It was a long process, lots of therapy, lots of back and forth between Andy and her own mother, but eventually, Abby decided that she would walk away from Andy, this person who had controlled her for so long. And this is how that went down. I remember all our parents moving as one, his to stand on either side of him as my mother gently took my arm. I needed her to help me walk away. I could not turn from his pleading eyes. She guided me to the car as Jordan, Andy, began to scream. That same heinous, chilling, keening wail that had terrorized us all within his cult. I no longer heard the howl of some supernatural anguish, but that of a thwarted, monstrous child. I got into the book, and Mom drove us the hell away from there. Dang, Abby. I mean, obviously this is a very, somber story, but impressively written. Well done. And okay, seriously though, congratulations to her for getting this person out of her life. It's not easy to get away from people like this. And also, gold star to her mother, okay? Seriously, that is what family's supposed to do. Protect your own. Support them. Back them up. No matter what. Dang. Feels good to read stuff like this. If only that's where the story ended, with Andy crying and whining and screaming on the ground, because that's not where it ended. He wrote an NSFW Harry Potter fanfiction. Hey, this video is not sponsored, but I did want to give a shout out to Deerstalker Pictures and their new Kickstarter for The Exorcism of Nixie. It is a Dungeons and Dragons short film. I think it is so cool. The leading lady is Fall Cosplay. If you don't know, she is a friend of this channel. She's been in my campaigns. She has been on my interview show. She is awesome, amazing. We love Fall Cosplay here, and I want to see this project succeed. They're so close to their next Kickstarter goal. So if you guys want to support independent filmmakers and make an amazing D&D short film happen, then head over to the description or to the pinned comment where you will find the Kickstarter for the new Deerstalker Pictures film. Oh, and of course, make sure to let them know Crispy sent you. As always, supporting my friends doesn't really support me. I mean, it makes me feel good, so they'll have to do, but in any case, let's get back to the tea. Okay, here we go. Ever heard of Dumbledore's Army in the Year of Darkness? I sure as hell haven't. I wasn't exactly the biggest Potterhead throughout my life, but apparently this was a fan fiction written by Andy going under the name Fan Fiction. Not fan fiction, fan fiction. Do not ask me why. I have not the faintest clue. But Andy wrote this very popular story that got a massive following, big enough that it got its own message board. It grew its own fandom, and you know what that means. Andy has access to a huge group of people. That means he's gonna restart his cult nonsense. This time around Harry frickin' Potter. Andy during this period was, well, he was definitely weirder, and that's saying something. For starters, he had adopted a very misogynistic, homophobic, anti-woke persona. He really hated women in the Harry Potter community, claimed they were all snowflakes and sugar-coated whiners, and they couldn't handle a real man story, and blah, 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 which just, dang, all right, that's nice. But beyond that, he had also developed an Irish accent. Yeah, that's right. This homegrown American lad decided to put on a fake Irish accent for his fan fiction persona, and it is just mwah.
I'm about 5'8", kind of skinny, okay, really skinny, with messy black hair, glasses, and a honest-to-God lightning-shaped scar in the center of my forehead.
Cringe. There's no other word for it. This makes me cringe. It's embarrassing.
But anyway, the point is that through this grimdark Harry Potter death fanfiction, Andy had a new group of loyal supporters. He actually managed to successfully do a Dade convention, which his detractors were not happy about. Remember that friend he suckered out of 15 grand for those plane tickets? Yeah, well, she went on a transphobic crash out after her fallout with Andy. I mean, I understand why she's upset. Do not get me wrong. I get it. But, like, seriously, she was obsessed with Andy in a very, very unhealthy, very creepy way, and the language she used when attacking him was not the best, in my opinion. And when she found out about this, her attacks only were amplified. But anyway, despite that woman's opinion, the convention did happen. DadeCon, where people got to watch Andy draw, listen to Andy talk, listen to Andy read his fan fiction. You know, sounds thrilling. He did have some weird ways of handling underage fans. Like, this is a pretty mature fan fiction. Obviously, it is not his responsibility to stop kids from reading it. That's their parents' job. But at the same time, when it comes to, like, the meet and greets, his policy was, if you're a minor, just don't tell me so I don't have to kick you out. Like, bro, if you're a minor going to this NSFW Harry Potter reading fan fiction, you shouldn't be here at all. Like, don't tell them just to not say anything. What the heck are you doing? He also would allegedly host communication on the message boards with underage fans ages 14 and up, where he would compare them to characters in his story, calling some of them hot. I do not have the screenshots of this. This is according to one of Andy's most devoted haters, which is a person by the name of T-Blogger on Tumblr. They have chronicled like every freaking second of this man's life. It is honestly, it's dedication that I have to respect. But they did not provide any screenshots to this because they felt the conversation was inappropriate. I do respect that, but I do want to also clarify, I have not seen them personally. They may not have happened. However, that's only a drop in the bucket with everything that this guy had going on. He was fully back on the nonsense train. And one of the people that he got suckered into his group was a woman by the name of Brittany. And this is where things get very, very dark. I do want to warn you, the next few minutes are going to be some serious, serious stuff that unfortunately Andy had to experience. So brace yourself for that. For the sake of clarity and making sure I tell the story properly, I'm going to read directly from the news article that talks about the situation. A shooting at a home over the weekend that left 3 people dead, including the gunman, stemmed from a financial dispute between one of the victims and her estranged husband. Police identified the shooter as Jason Eisenberg, 27, and the victims as Anthony Chambers, 41, and Brittany Quinn, 27. Eisenberg lived at a home in the 5200 block of Venue Drive with Chambers, Quinn, and a 27-year-old man, according to police spokesman Officer Cleo Mayoral. Police believe Eisenberg shot Chambers and Quinn, and then shot the 27-year-old man in the foot before shooting himself in the head. Andy's that 27-year-old man. He was the sole survivor in a house full of corpses. That is not something that people recover from. I don't want to elaborate too much on that, but I don't think I need to. It's common sense in my opinion. And I just have to say that no matter what Andy's faults are, no one deserves to go through an experience like that. This is a very heinous, serious, and senseless tragedy that should never have happened. People have tried to place the blame on Andy, including that person who went on the transphobic crash out. I think that's incredibly dangerous and misses a lot of the point of why these things do happen, especially in the United States. There are deeper issues that lead to these sort of murders being so unfortunately common. Andy, in my opinion, based on what I have seen, is not one of them. Now, Andy can cope with this tragedy however he wishes, but at the same time, I think his coping should be tasteful. And what he did was not, in my opinion at least. In the aftermath of her death, mere days later, he would post an open eulogy called For the Fallen, which is apparently a cry to battle used within his Harry Potter fanfiction. Obviously, this is not the worst thing in the world. Again, he experienced something truly traumatic. Everyone handles that in their own way, but it gets a lot worse than that. He would go on to over-exaggerate his role in what happened in that house. He would talk about himself like he tried to talk down the gunman. He tried to save everybody, and he just couldn't do it. The gunman only accidentally shot him in the ankle when, according to the actual police report, the gunman attempted to shoot Andy just through a door and missed him. He got lucky. He wasn't a hero. He was a survivor. And obviously survivors deserve support and empathy, but to treat yourself like a heroic savior in the aftermath of a real tragedy, to frame yourself like this is some kind of fan fiction that you're writing, it's horrible, man. On top of that, he would over-exaggerate his role in Brittany's life and tell elaborate stories about the person she was. They were not close for very long. She knew him through the fan fiction. I'm not trying to underplay the fact that they were friends. They were close. But Andy took things to another level. Eventually, and I don't have a more tasteful word for this, he started fetishizing Brittany. Yes, sometimes I snuck a peek at her ass as she bent over across the room to get a book from a low shelf. She had a glorious, incredible ass. Some of her last pictures are of her posing in a pair of thrift store found leather pants, showing it off to great effort. We had a profound bond. We were in love. It was platonic. It was deeper than that. We were best friends. We were co-workers. We decided not to be together yet. We were life partners. We were endgame. The game got called for rain. It's not one or the other. I'm sorry if I was smiling or on the verge of laughing through that, because, like, I don't even know what to say, man. That's just... What are you doing? Anyway, there were a few disasters that happened after Brittany's death. He tried to have a Trail of Tears march in her honor, which is an interesting choice. Trail of Tears has some symbolism, though not the symbolism that Andy referred to. It has a very real tragedy attached to it already. But anyway, I guess he wanted to hike the Trail of Tears for her. And according to the people who went with him, it was a disaster. But apparently they had a doctor on board. And by a doctor, I mean Andy manifesting and inhibiting the spirit of a doctor so that he could operate on his fellow hikers. But look, obviously this changes the way the fandom would work around Dade. This was a very real tragedy. And slowly but surely, due to this, and just due to people losing interest and moving on to other things, Andy's popularity in Dade would fade away. Andy himself would go into obscurity. I didn't know anything about this guy until like a month ago, and I'm sure many younger viewers of this channel also had no idea that this dude even existed. He would pop up every now and again, pop up in the Supernatural fandom, for example, where actually that letter that I mentioned was posted. He was comparing himself to a ship in Supernatural when he was talking about Brittany there. Tasteful. But look, at the end of the day, the Supernatural fandom actually chased him off. He got chased off a bunch of times, but it would not be the end for him. It's time to finally talk about Critical Role. Alright, mid-2010s, Andy has a new buddy. This person is named Megan. This is someone that Andy is very, very close to, and she found Critical Role. Andy starts posting about the show and saying it's interesting and so forth and so such, but eventually he wouldn't just be interacting with the show through Megan. He would be watching the show himself. He finally caught a live episode, and he was enamored, especially with Taliesin Jaffe. He really loved Taliesin and his character of Percy DeRollo. On Twitter, he would be constantly atting the cast members, tagging them in all of his posts. This is not by any means the worst fandom behavior out there. There are plenty of fans that do that, though it is irritating, it's not the worst. Though the degree by which he did it was definitely needy, and he was aware of that, by the way. Critical Role and Geek and Sundry are the talisman I'm hanging on to not have a self-destructive breakdown by saying that Weird and Extra is not failing, and there's no such thing as karmically irredeemable, and I could live to be a better me. However this goes, I'll be grateful for that. I want to apologize to the Critical Role fandom too. It's fouls, and I'm terrified of my trip to LA, and I'm fear-puking art and hyperactive brain all over you guys, and I know I'm failing. Don't seem creepy obsessive, but it's what I'm grounding on right now for personal reasons. Okay. He also compared his hair to Matt Mercer, which... How dare you? How dare you compare this shaggy, unkempt mane to the majestic, beautiful locks of Master Mercer himself? How dare you, sir? Out of all the horrible things this man has done, this is the worst. Unfreaking forgivable. Anyway, he was very much obsessed with Critical Role. Like he said there, it was the sole thing that kept him going. It was like his chance at fandom redemption. Again, he said that himself. I'm not editorializing. His words, not mine. Critical Role was his chance to really build something new, which is interesting, isn't it? I mean, this guy is infamous within a lot of Tumblr, online, fandom culture, which Critical Role definitely has overlap with. He's not changing his name. He's not changing the way he acts. He's still going by Andy Blake. People know who he is. He can't just enjoy something, right? It's not like me with Lego or me with Destiny. You know, I love those things, but I don't have a persona around them. Andy Blake, he does need a following. In fact, a few years later, he would actually say directly that building a following is a big part of what keeps him going, which is just, oh boy. But in any case, Critical Role fans took note of Andy Blake popping into their fandom, and while this was all going on, people were issuing some very strong warnings about the kind of man this guy was. He was not to be tolerated within this group, something that he did not love. He felt like he was ruining the fandom for Megan, not just for himself, which, like, bro, if you're really worried about ruining the fandom, why don't you just change your freaking name, okay? People know who you are and all of your nonsense. If you want to enjoy something, just enjoy it incognito, my god. But again, like I said, like he said, building a following is important. He can't just be a fan, he's gotta be the fan. So that means he's gotta head over to LA. His LA trip would be hosted by someone named Molly. According to them, they had a very, very open house policy. Molly was okay with people from the online world coming over, staying over for a little bit, very generous of them. However, Andy Blake didn't see the little bit part of that whole proposal. He wanted to stay for like a little bit longer. So anyway, he shows up, he's here for a week, clearly has no intention of leaving. He's making future plans with us, as far as to plan my wedding in a year, assuming he's going to be invited. Very comfortable right away in my friend group. Like I said, we have an open door policy, so there are other friends here. We got Pathfinder night, movie night, BBQ night, etc. So Andy was able to meet everyone fast and burrow in hard. He spoke about my closest friend as if they were a stranger to me. Completely strange and very disconcerting. Anywho, as a week goes by, he's not making any plans or mentions of leaving. I don't really know what to do with this guy. I'm a very mild-mannered person, so I ask fiance. He wants me to kick him out because he was making people uncomfortable. But I felt bad. Meanwhile, I was going to be leaving town at the end of the month, and my house sitter said she didn't want to be alone in the home. So I thought, well, I guess I should just let Andy stay through the month. He didn't pressure me, but when I brought it up to him, he said, oh, yes, as if he was expecting it. What he did not divulge to me is that despite me clearly saying he could only stay for a week, he was telling other people that my fiance and I's place was his home base, and he was to stay with us for the entire summer, and he would only go crash on someone else's couch if he was making a commission for them. But yeah, there were more gems from Andy's stay, various problematic speeches, weird performative allyship, lots of testimonies and stuff like that. One particular highlight is that he decided that it was appropriate to call a woman's boyfriend her trophy man, as if they weren't in some kind of actual real relationship. The trophy man that he's insulting is Kyle Hill. Yeah, this guy. You've probably seen his videos recommended to you. He's extremely famous on YouTube. More famous than the Critical Role cast, arguably. Of all the people to beef with, Kyle Hill? My God. But in any case, the real highlight was him trying to get with Critical Role. He wanted Molly to introduce him to the cast. Apparently she has some kind of through line. I don't know exactly what that relationship was. It could be anything from just like their mutuals on social media, or she actually has friendships with the cast members. But in any case, he really thought that she could do this. He thought that she could introduce him to people like Matt Mercer and Taliesin Jaffe, who he had a particular fixation on. And as a part of this, he wanted to host a gourmet meal in Molly's house, naturally, so they could invite the entire Critical Role cast to eat it. I am now going to read to you the menu that he proposed. If you're still interested, potential dinner party member, no beef, no pork, no raw fruits or vegetables. First, the barbarian, fire roasted kui skewer with yuca. The monk, yuzu, ginger, and Thai chili pickled vegetables. The warlock, stufa al carnet. I'm really sorry. I'm trying my best. It's Mediterranean octopus stew with sea salt crusted bread. The blood hunter, spiced peacock with edible flowers, and Cuberland sauce. The wizard. I'm not even gonna try, man. Why would you do that to me? Anyway, that thing wrapped in pastry sheets covered with the rogue, a shot glass of spring pea soup with fennel and gin. And finally, the cleric, rainbow hamster unicorn donuts with strawberry custard filling and lemon cotton candy, also known as what I like to call homegrown diabetes. What a menu. Apparently, Molly has a friend who is actually a very accomplished chef, and that person just lost their mind looking at what Andy wanted to serve to the staff of Critical Frickin' Role. Now, it should go without saying, but Andy's LA plans to meet the cast of Critical Role and get in with the community fell through greatly. I will also note that at this point, he had shifted his obsession. No longer is it on Percival DeRollo, who made Andy feel comfortable with his higher, upper intellect. But now, instead of Percy, it's Molly Mock Tea Leaf, which, you know, I'm glad his character, his fave, had a favorable end, right? I mean, I don't hope any ill upon him, you know? I don't want his life to completely fall apart, but according to the people in his life, he's hurt a lot of folks out there. You know, it's funny, he's talking about Critical Role like it's his chance at redemption, but like, what's he really doing to earn that? I mean, man, you don't deserve to have a fandom. A fandom is something that you earn. You should earn it by acting like, at the very least, a decent person. I'm not trying to pretend like every influencer out there is a saint. God, no. But ideally, you earned your fandom by at baseline being decent to somebody, appealing to somebody. Andy Blake doesn't do that. In fact, he allegedly hurts the people who end up following him, and therefore no one's gonna want to follow him. That's not anyone's fault but his own. He doesn't want redemption. He wants things to go back to the way he wants. If he really cared about just enjoying fandom, like I said before, he'd change the damn username, go on alt account, and enjoy Critical Role or Supernatural in the shadows like every other normal freaking person. You don't need to build a community. But Andy does, and that means he's always going to be a problem, because Andy's communities end in disaster every damn time. Oh, and by the way, if you are watching this on release day, then tomorrow I will be joining millions of other Americans out there for the No Kings event on June 14th. It is happening all across the United States in every single state. No doubt there is an event happening near you, and I recommend that you attend. As the child of an immigrant family, this is something that I am extremely passionate about, and I hope that you will join me out there in the field. Thank you so much. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed and you watched this whole gargantuan episode all the way through to the end, then go down in the comments and leave the comment mind hole, to reference part of Andy's little religion. It's just a funny term, and I want to see people commenting it. Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, then you might enjoy this video where we talked about every single dumb Critical Role controversy. It's linked up in the cards. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to support the channel and get access to exclusive homebrew content, Discord, and vlogs, then you can find our Patreon linked in the description down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe, support. I will see you all next time. Farewell.